In the spring and summer of 1917, in a quiet and unremarkable corner of central Portugal, a series of events began that would eventually captivate the attention of the world and become one of the most documented and debated religious experiences of the 20th century. The place was called Cova da Iria, a modest hollow of land surrounded by rolling hills, olive trees, and rocky fields where local families grazed their sheep and tried to coax crops from the soil. Life there was simple, harsh, and deeply tied to the rhythms of nature. Families rose before dawn, attended Mass when they could, and faced the daily struggles of rural poverty. Portugal as a whole, however, was far from peaceful. The monarchy had been overthrown in 1910, and the new republic had launched an aggressive campaign of secularization. Churches were closed or repurposed in some areas. Religious education was driven out of schools, and the clergy often faced suspicion or outright hostility from government officials and intellectuals who embraced modern anti-clerical ideas. The country had also entered the First World War on the side of the Allies in 1916, sending thousands of young men to the trenches of France, where many would never return. At home, inflation soared, food became scarce, political instability grew, and a sense of anxiety and division hung over the nation like a gathering storm. Was into this world of uncertainty and change that three small shepherd children stepped forward with a story that seemed impossible. Their names were Lucia dos Santos, who was 10 years old, and her younger cousins Francisco Marto, 9, and Jacinta Marto, 7. They lived in the nearby hamlet of Aljustrel, in humble stone houses with earthen floors. None of them had any formal schooling. They could not read or write. Their days were spent leading small flocks of sheep across the hills, singing folk songs, picking wildflowers, and praying the simple rosary their parents had taught them. Lucia was lively and talkative, often organizing games among the children. Francisco was quieter and more contemplative, preferring to play his reed flute or sit in silence watching the clouds. Jacinta, the youngest, was affectionate but also deeply sensitive, easily moved to tears by thoughts of suffering or the sadness of Jesus. Before the extraordinary visitations of 1917 truly began, the children experienced 3 mysterious encounters in 1916 with a figure they described as an angel. These happened in hidden spots among the rocks and olive groves. The angel, who called himself the Angel of Peace, taught them special prayers of adoration and reparation. He encouraged them to offer sacrifices for the conversion of sinners and for the peace of the world. These quiet, hidden moments prepared their young hearts for what was to come, deepening their sense of prayer and self-denial without anyone else knowing. Then, on May 13, 1917, while tending their sheep at Cova da Iria, everything changed. A sudden flash of bright light filled the sky. Startled, the children looked up and saw, above a small holm oak tree, a beautiful lady enveloped in light brighter than the sun, yet soft and gentle to their eyes. She wore a pure white tunic and a mantle edged with gold, and in her hands she held a rosary. The children felt an overwhelming sense of peace and joy. "Do not be afraid," she told them. "I come from heaven. I ask you to come here on the 13th day of each month for 6 months. Then I will tell you who I am and what I want." She also asked them to pray the rosary every day for the end of the war and for peace. After speaking, she rose slowly into the sky and disappeared. When the children returned home and told their families what had happened, they were met mostly with disbelief and scolding. Lucia's mother, Maria Rosa, was particularly harsh, fearing her daughter was lying or being deceived. Neighbors whispered and laughed. In the tense anti-religious climate of the time, such claims could bring trouble. Yet the children remained firm in what they had seen. On June 13th, a small crowd of curious people followed the children to Cova da Iria. Once again the lady appeared to them, surrounded by the same heavenly light. She spoke more urgently about the need for prayer, sacrifice, and devotion to her Immaculate Heart. She told Lucia that Francisco and Jacinta would soon be taken to heaven, but that she herself must remain on earth for a longer time to help spread the message. News of the events began to spread beyond the local villages. By July 13th, thousands of people had gathered. On this day, the lady delivered some of the most solemn and sobering parts of her message. First, she showed the children a terrifying vision of hell, where souls of the damned suffered in flames and despair. Shaken, the children understood the seriousness of sin and the importance of saving souls. The lady then spoke of coming punishments for the world if humanity did not turn back to God. She predicted that the current war would end, but that a worse and more terrible war would break out during the reign of the next pope if people continued to offend God. She requested the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart and the practice of communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. Finally, she promised a great public miracle in October so that all might believe. The children faced increasing pressure. In August, the local civil administrator, an outspoken anti-clerical man named Artur de Oliveira Santos, arrested the 3 children, locked them in jail, and tried to force them to deny their story through threats and intimidation. The children refused to lie, even when separated and frightened. Because they were imprisoned, the lady appeared to them later on August 19th at a place called Valinhos. She expressed sadness over the obstacles placed in their way, but repeated her calls for prayer and sacrifice. September 13th brought an even larger crowd, estimated in the tens of thousands. Many reported seeing a luminous globe descending through the sky before the children saw the lady. She again urged daily recitation of the rosary and promised that the October miracle would be the greatest yet. The climax came on October 13, 1917, despite terrible weather with pouring rain that turned the Cova da Iria into a vast sea of mud. An estimated 70,000 people from all social classes, peasants, city folk, believers, skeptics, journalists, and even Freemasons gathered in the field. They stood soaked and cold for hours. The children arrived and knelt in prayer. Suddenly, the lady appeared to them and identified herself as Our Lady of the Rosary. She delivered her final messages and instructed them to continue building a chapel there. Then she pointed toward the sun. At that moment, the rain stopped abruptly. The thick clouds parted, and the sun appeared as a brilliant but dull silver disk that could be looked at directly without pain. To the astonishment of the massive crowd, the sun began to spin rapidly on its axis, throwing out dazzling rays of every color, blue, violet, yellow, red, and green, that bathed the entire landscape and the people themselves in shifting hues. It appeared to dance and zigzag across the sky. Then, to the terror of many, it seemed to detach from the heavens and plunge wildly toward the earth, as if it would crush the crowd. People fell to their knees in fear, shouting for mercy and confessing their sins. An intense heat was felt that quickly dried the rain-soaked clothes of the thousands present. After approximately 10 minutes, the sun returned to its normal position and the sky cleared. The phenomenon was witnessed not only at Cova da Iria, but by people many miles away. Secular newspapers, including the anti-clerical O Seculo, reported the extraordinary event in detail the following day. In the months and years that followed, the lives of the 3 children were transformed. Francisco and Jacinta, already weakened, contracted the terrible Spanish flu epidemic that swept the world. Francisco died peacefully on April 4, 1919, at the age of 10, offering all his sufferings for the love of God and the conversion of sinners. Jacinta followed on February 20, 1920, at the age of 9, after enduring painful hospital treatments with heroic patience and many mystical experiences. Lucia, as promised, remained behind. She entered religious life, eventually becoming a Carmelite nun known as Sister Lucia of the Immaculate Heart. She lived until 2005 and wrote detailed memoirs under obedience to her superiors, recording everything she remembered of the apparitions and the 3 secrets. The message of Fátima, centered on prayer, penance, conversion, and devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, spread rapidly. The Catholic Church conducted a thorough investigation and, in 1930, officially declared the apparitions worthy of belief. Over the decades, popes have repeatedly endorsed the message. The tiny chapel requested by the lady has grown into one of the largest and most visited Marian shrines in the world. Millions of pilgrims from every continent travel to Fátima each year, many walking the final kilometers on their knees in acts of devotion. Popes have visited, including St. John Paul II, who credited Our Lady of Fátima with saving his life after the assassination attempt in 1981. More than a century later, the events at Fátima continue to raise profound questions. How could three uneducated, illiterate shepherd children predict and orchestrate such a massive public event? Why did tens of thousands of people, including many skeptics, report seeing the sun dance in the sky on a day that had been announced months in advance? Was it a collective hallucination, a rare natural atmospheric phenomenon, or something beyond ordinary explanation? For believers, it stands as a powerful heavenly intervention and a merciful warning to humanity.